I was a temp.
Okay.
So I left university and did a summer job, and then took a role with a temping agency in accountancy. But that moved quite quickly into implementing our asset management system at the time, which we still have. It's now called Ellipse. It was MIMS. So working with the engineers to turn signalling diagrams into information so that we could set schedules against. So that was kind of my grounding in the railway, really being able to understand how do we perform maintenance and what's the asset schema like, I guess, at quite a basic level. Back then it's advanced a lot. But
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, obviously, taking that into account, what would you say are the kind of striking differences between the railway you joined back then and the railway you work for now?
Oh, absolutely, much more data driven. We've made huge steps in terms of understanding our assets, their condition, through the likes of remote condition monitoring. Our train-borne monitoring has stepped on hugely since I started with its ultrasonics, plain line pattern recognition, our track geometry coverage. They're all a step change away from when I started. And our use of engineering techniques has really progressed as well. So I'm a huge fan of reliability centered maintenance and using that, so that we've, I guess, borrowed originally from the airline industry, but it's in multiple industries now. Using that to understand the failure modes, effects, criticality analysis, and then setting regimes, maintenance regimes, monitoring regimes against that has given us huge success and will help us step on again in the next year.
Okay. What has been the most, let's say, ambitious or innovative project you've been involved in to date? And could you maybe explain a little bit about the challenges involved in this project?
Probably plain line pattern recognition was one of the toughest. It probably came quite early in the machine vision, I guess, development cycle of capability. So it was before deep learning. All the models were configured, I'll say by hand, not quite obviously with a computer, but by hand. And that was a huge step forward for us. So we went from controlling the track weekly or 2 weekly to allowing a train to run every 4 weeks, and give us the same level of assurance that we have from the human being performing that task.
Yeah.
So we originally tried to redesign what a human can do, but quite quickly realised that we needed to think differently.
Yeah.
So we sort of took a multi-sensor approach, bringing in track geometry, bringing in ballast scanning. So I guess understanding the limitations of vision at the time was really key to us. That was one of the biggest challenges, because obviously we wanted everything. And then being able to manage manage the things that we wanted to find that vision couldn't do for us. So redesigning the regime to meet the information available to us whilst providing a safe output was really what we were were the biggest challenges. And then the people and culture changing the train service. It was a huge project.
I can imagine. Okay, and in terms of kind of future projects, can you give us an insight on anything you're working on in terms of improving track efficiency that you might be working on now, or you might soon be working on?
Absolutely. There's a huge amount going on at the moment. We've got our infrastructure monitoring program that I'm, supporting but not directly running. That will hopefully transform how we do infrastructure monitoring. So train-borne infrastructure monitoring, much greater use of service trains, much better use of the data that we already capture, and will really help us drive, efficiency, reliability, safety into CPs into our next control period. So over the next sort of 7 years. We're also looking at fibre optic acoustic sensing, which is still relatively immature, but some of the newer capability that's coming on board will really help us to drive our understanding of track condition, could potentially help us with jointed tracks, so the older types of track formation, and trespass, level crossings, train tracking. I mean, the possibilities, if we can get it right, are huge, from using a piece of infrastructure that's already out there with an interrogator attached. So and then sensing of switches and crossings, so understanding the condition at the crossing those the switch toes. There's some good capabilities coming on at the moment that are going through product acceptance, so they'll move to roll out soon as well. And then there's another one as well. One that's really beginning to excite is the opportunity LiDAR scanning of the network could offer us in terms of understanding where things are, understanding vegetation growth, being able to design TAMP.
Yeah, very interesting. I think we have Chris Stanley and Monica Haynes talking about that.
Oh, yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay. And in terms of obviously digitalization, as you know, one of the biggest challenges is for infrastructure as owners is actually managing the data coming from the manual devices, the measuring tools, and other sources of data. How are you improving that day-to-day task of managing and analyzing all that information? Because it is a vast challenge, isn't it?
The first thing that we've done is to set a much better specification of what we expect. So by having that standards, we can then pin everything to it. So being able to identify our assets, I think plus or minus 2 meters, will be a significant change for us. And then off the back of that, setting tools that enable us to comply with that standard. So giving people handhelds with a greater level of GPS capability, making sure that we move away from what is quite archaic miles, yards and chains referencing system for our assets to GPS derived, so coordinate based understanding of those of where those assets are in space. Yeah. So that's where we see the huge. It's going to be a huge step change. There's a lot of work to do, but once we've got that right, that will make a massive difference to how we manage and maintain the infrastructure.
Yeah, sounds like exciting times. And also, can you just give us a taste of your presentation in terms of what are you covering for those who aren't aware of what you do within Network Rail?
So I'll be talking about our Intelligent Infrastructure Programme, how we're bringing together existing data systems and driving new sources of data into a common set of tools that will enable our infrastructure managers and engineers to have a holistic view of all the things that they need to do their job. So really supporting the front line in performing their roles safely, efficiently and reliably.
Okay, and what most are you looking forward to at this year's RIAMS Summit? Obviously, we have a 2 days of digital transformation and the second day on data management, over 25 case studies from different operators and owners. Love to obviously understand what's exciting for you in terms of the agenda this year.
It's always great to see what others are doing and what we can learn from the other infrastructure owners, infrastructure maintainers. There's so much activity in this area at the moment across Europe and across the world, and being able to understand others' capability, how we could work together, how we can steal ideas, and how we can bring those into the UK network is what I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that point. I think speaking to pretty much every infrastructure owner, collaboration was one of the key things that came up as an industry we could do much better in. As you said, maybe stealing information, but sharing information probably is
absolutely.
But it's okay. But I totally agree with you on that point. And Tim, obviously, I'd like to say thank you very much for taking the time to join us today, to giving us your views on the rail industry. And it sounds like not only for you, but for Network Rail, there's some really exciting times ahead in terms of the future of railway in Great Britain. So
absolutely.
thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.